Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Clallam EDC Coffee Chat, Coffee with Colleen. We are really excited this morning to have on Perry from Brix Marine. He Perry Knudson has been the general manager there for since Brix Marine purchased Armstrong several years ago, and he also serves on the EDC board of directors. So we're really happy to have his voice and his viewpoint and perspective for us at the EDC. So, and also Brix Marine's a really important employer for our community. So with that, just a couple housekeeping items. If you'll keep yourself on mute, that would be great so that we don't inadvertently get any background noise. And if you have any questions for Perry, you can either put them in the chat and we'll ask them, or you can raise your hands and I'll let Perry know you've got a question so you can ask it yourself. So Perry's got some slides, and again, Perry, thank you so much for joining us and doing this morning and sharing the story of Brix Marine to a larger section of the community.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Colleen and Mitch, for the invitation to have me come on and talk a little bit about Brix. As you mentioned, I've been in this role since the change of ownership, which was as recent ago or as all the way back as 2017, depending on how you look at these last 6.5, almost 7 years. They certainly feel like they've flown by for me. And you know, one of the things that was important for our business at that point was to make sure that we did engage with our community. There were and still are a lot of folks that live, you know, or involved here in Clallam County that have no idea that Brix exists or no idea what we do. So I really cherish these opportunities to share a little bit of our story, because there's quite a few families that rely on this place to work and thrive here in Clallam County. So with that, I will attempt to. I guess I gotta turn on my screen share. It's on. So the $1 million question, is this working?
Yes, it is. Looks great.
Okay, great. So you guys can all see the Bob and Betty Beister. Cool. So, you know, with this opportunity, what I thought that I would do with you guys this morning is start with sharing a little bit about why we exist, what it is we do, the types of jobs, the types of employment that we offer to people in the area, and a little bit about our products. I have more hidden slides on that, so depending on some of your questions at the end, or if you want to dive in, we can always dive a little bit deeper on the boats themselves. But in general, I'm just going to try to give you guys more of kind of a picture of our business. So, you know, first of all, why do we build boats? I think that's a great question, and it's one that sometimes we ponder too. Sometimes it's an easy question to answer. There's other times, depending on the issues we're dealing with, we're like, why in the world did we choose to build boats? But you know, really, it comes from a passion for being on and around the water, and you know, on the waterfront, and you know, at a fundamental level, we believe that a day spent on the water is probably the best day that you're going to have. And even though we build boats for recreational use, as well as boats for all the way through to government use, we really believe that, you know, the craft that you're on can really help you to engage with the world around you, and spending time on the water is important. And this is important to us because it's a guiding light to our employee base as well. You know, we want to provide jobs for people that they feel like they're part of something bigger. And even though most of our employees spend their time in these blue factories out here along the highway, they're building something that is really intended to go out into the world and spend its time on the water. And you know, we have product in Alaska, in Hawaii. We have stuff as far away as Baku, Azerbaijan on the Caspian Sea. And so the concept that we're building something here in Port Angeles, even though, you know, we may be down in the bilge of a boat, literally and physically here in Port Angeles, we're building something that ultimately is going to enable somebody to spend time on the water for years and years to come. And so, you know, that's really, the people who work here share a passion for that. Along with that passion, we find it important to have some ground rules for how we're going to conduct ourselves in the workplace. Again, this was something that was really important to us as we kind of got to reimagine ourselves in 2017. We got to say, hey, how do we want to engage with each other? How do we want to engage with our vendors and our partners? And how do we want to be known to engage with our customers? And we actually went through a process in order to come up with these 6 values that you guys see on the screen here. And it was quite fun. We got the entire shop together, and I had a handful of 5-gallon buckets and about 1,000 sticky notes and pens. And we actually spent time as an entire shop. So we had, you know, the folks who help us sweep the floors all the way through to our management staff. Everybody worked together and wrote down all of their individual core values, like the things that they felt were important to them, and turn all those in. And the buckets came in handy because we started to use the buckets to start to sift through themes. And then from those themes, we were able to draw down into the 6 things that we determined would be kind of our guiding light and our guiding principle. And so these 6 values that you guys see were really developed by the whole team. And we have these posted at various places throughout the shop. If you ever get a chance to tour here, as well as being up in our conference room. And, you know, it's important to us because to have up, because there are times in the real world here where we have to deal with something that may be, you know, more challenging, or even deal with a person who may be having some issues. And having these up on the wall gives everybody the opportunity to make sure that they're falling in line, and to help provide gentle reminders to their fellow workers. So we found that it's easier to keep the train on the rails than it is to allow it to derail and then try to put it back on. So these core values, as I mentioned, are posted in numerous places around the shop, and we use these to make sure we're being the types of workers that we want to be. And so with that, our objective, specifically, like where we see our niche in the workplace, is building these custom aluminum catamarans in particular. So we specialize in multi-hull design and construction, all in catamarans. And maybe one of you can hold that question for the end. I'm sure usually I always get that one, why catamarans? We'll be happy to kind of give you the Cole's notes on why we believe that aluminum catamarans are the best for our customers. But, you know, our objective is to go out and build the best in North America. And we're in a unique position in the market. When our company was founded in the 90s, we were one of the first small boat builders who started building catamarans and multi-hulls. They were still by and large pretty rare at that point. And we have just kind of found a niche for ourselves in that particular product line. And so, you know, our objective moving forward continues to be, like, we want to lead the market. And, you know, to this point, we've done a good job with that. And we're going to continue. That's the plan. So a little bit about how we set goals around here. We have this this kind of kitschy thing called the Brix Beacon. And what this really is a guiding light for the organization. So this is when we put on our strategic planning hats and we're trying to think a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years into the future. We use these three goals as a beacon. You'll see we've got this little lighthouse over here to the right, and that's really how we're using it. So these three goals are not necessarily hard and fast goals in and of themselves, but what they are is a light in the distance that says, okay, if we're going to take on any initiatives, we need to make sure that we've got these things in our line of sight. So we try to make it so that any business goal or any strategic plan, we can somehow show that it still fits within this Brix beacon. The first of which is being the best place to work. So that is specifically an inward looking goal to our employees. We want to provide the best opportunity for them for career growth, for training. We want to take care of their monetary needs. We want to be providing a benefits package that enables them to live and thrive and support their families. There's some other things that play into that as well. We allocate a certain amount of our operating budget every year to team building opportunities. We do a nice Christmas party or holiday party in December. We do some events during the summertime and in the spring. We engage in monthly meals for everybody, as well as having an employee appreciation program where we acknowledge and honor people for the time spent here. So their tenure, and we take that pretty seriously. We believe that happy people build better boats. So we do the best we can to engage in with our employees and invest in them. The second thing is that we want to be able to provide the best custom experience for our customers. I've been in this business now for a little over 12 years. And if there's one thing I've learned, I could regale you with stories of the challenges of custom boat building. And that isn't just for the custom boat builder, that's also for the custom boat buyer. It can be a real challenging process and a process that we need people to be engaged in. And we've set goals for guiding people through that process internally. We can't promise that it's always going to be easy. We can't promise that people will like every single decision that has to be made or every single outcome along the way. However, we want to do the best we can to make sure that we're stewarding people through that process and they feel like they get to be part of the solutions that get created. And when there's a beautiful boat at the end that's full of all these custom features, our customers had a part in that just as much as our design staff or our fabricators and welders. So we really want to make sure that we're catering to our customers' needs through that process. And then the third thing is to continuously improve as we're trying to deliver the right boat on time and in budget. This gets repeated a lot, probably more than our folks would like to admit. We call it the Brix way, quote unquote. And it is this concept that, every time we approach a project, whether it's globally, like an entire boat build, or it's, I have to go weld this one particular piece on this boat, we're driving this culture of how do we do it better this time than I did it last time. And sometimes better is in the preparation, sometimes better is in the execution, sometimes better is in the cleanup or the closeout of the project. And so we really try to take a pretty holistic look at what it takes to get something done. And our goal at every point along the way is to make sure that we're just moving that needle a little bit further to the right. Like we just want to do it a little bit better than we did the time before. So the Brix Way is also a pretty popular banner. So once again, if you get a chance to tour here, you'll also see that up in various places in the shop and including in the boardroom, because it's that constant reminder of how do I do things a little bit better today than I did it yesterday. So again, we use these as kind of a litmus test for any level of strategic planning that we're looking to do as a business. All right, into the product a little bit. So we build custom boats. That means we build everything from a tiny little skiff to paint and maintenance barges for the US Navy. Some of the projects are really fast, some of the projects are really slow, some of the projects are, you know, really shiny and really show off, and other things are below the waterline and pretty boring. And as a custom builder, we have our sales staff is very busy because people are constantly coming to us with their ideas in hopes that we can come up with some kind of a design or a product for them. That being said, most of the work that we do ends up fitting into one of these kind of 6 categories that you see in front of you. And I'll explain a little bit about the method to the madness here. So the 4 categories that you see with the red banner over the top, those are all products that are developed entirely in-house. So that means that the concept design through to the engineering is done by our team and our staff. So the intellectual property is created and owned by Brix Marine on behalf of our customers. The 2 categories that have kind of that darker gray banner on them would be projects where some of the intellectual property, maybe even the whole design itself, is done by some other designer or some other architect. However, we provided the construction. So you can think of that as being, in those cases, we're more of a general contractor, you know, building somebody's custom home. So we work with Naiad. You see them in the bottom middle there, specifically for rigid hull inflatable projects. So both of those boats in that image are operate out of Friday Harbor. You may have seen them just even off the spit here in Port Angeles, chasing the whales. So those are rigid hull inflatable. So it's an aluminum boat with a collar system. And we partner with them. They're a design firm out of New Zealand, and they have vessels all over the world, and we're very pleased to be their only licensed builder here for North America. And then under the designer banner there in the top right, that particular vessel that's pictured there was designed in Vancouver, Canada by a gentleman named Scott Judson with Judson Marine Design. We have worked with him for various projects. But we've worked with other naval architects as well on a build to print or in, you know, more as a general contractor. And then the other 4 categories in the red, as I mentioned, would be all projects that where all the designs would be owned in-house. And Colleen, I see your hands up. Feel free to jump in.
Perry, how many people on your team work on designing boats?
Specifically, we have 4 full-time engineers. I chuckle about that because we build custom boats and our 4 engineering staff are very busy with the number of projects that we have, and really anybody who works here has the opportunity to step up with an idea. And so with any single boat that goes out, there absolutely will be either systems designs or even physically constructed solutions that were designed by somebody on the floor. Somebody who was building it, who may have gotten prints from our engineering staff and said, this would work, but what if we do it like this? And everybody kind of stands back and says, that's a great idea. Why don't you do it that way?
So that's great. So
yeah, we have 4 full-time.
What kind of training do these design engineers have?
Yeah, so our lead engineer has been in the industry for decades at this point in his career, and he was trained in ship design and hull design in Kennebunkport, Maine. The other 3 engineers that we have all have some level of secondary education training in either drafting, electrical, or mechanical engineering. However, they have done most of their learning on the job. So while they have some training, none of them are actually credentialed PEs, professional engineers. And with some of our projects, that's a good question. With some of our projects, they do require, depending on the regulatory body, that we're working under, there may be a need for a professional engineer's stamp of approval, in which case there's a couple of different folks that we work with. But that's a service that we would hire. So we would do most of the engineering, and then the professional engineer is providing a review and an approval that we would then
Got it.
submit. Good question. Cool. So with these other four categories, I want to highlight especially the first three. So the Rec Pro, the PAX Cat, and the Lab Cat. These are the three markets that we have the largest share of. So the Rec Pro is, first of all, that name is short Brix slang for recreational professional. So those are boats that are primarily designed, or all of their lineage is in our commercial custom boat design, and we have turned it into a recreational product. So we've softened it, for lack of a better term. Nicer finishes, more creature comforts into the design. However, the superstructure, the way in which the boat is built is identical as if we were building something for US Coast Guard survey. And that represents historically about 25% of the boats that we build. The next one there you see is our PAX Cat. Once again, PAX is slang for passengers. And Brix has really carved a niche for ourselves in the passenger carrying market for vessels that carry between 7 and 49 passengers. So that's a regulatory niche within the US Coast Guard. And we have built many vessels under that particular certificate of inspection. It's called a COI, to operate all over the US, including Hawaii. And so within that space, we would have water taxis, ferries, eco tour vessels, charter fishing boats. We would put any boat where there is a paying passenger, we would fit that into this kind of PAX Cat category for us. And then the third being Lab Cat. So these are boats designed to be floating labs. They're scientific research instruments, or they're vessels that are being used for people to take their scientific research instruments out over the water. So primary customers in that kind of market space would be universities, the government. We've also sold to private operators who tend to spend their time contracting to the government for those types of services. So those three are really the lion's share of what we end up building. Will fit kind of in one of those three categories. And then our catch-all bucket in the lower right is custom. So everything else that we would design would fit into that space. What's pictured there are very sophisticated fish farm tenders. So that's a live aboard 39-foot, almost 40-foot boat that can have 4 people living on it for a couple of weeks at a time, and does some pretty cool work. If you asked us to build a barge or a pontoon, all of that would kind of fit into that. We'd fit into that fully custom category. So I mentioned that recreational vessels have historically been 25%. That's really looking back across my 12 years here to come up with that number. Our current order file, which is we're currently sitting on bookings all the way through 2026, which is pretty exciting for a business of our size. And this is the exact breakup right now. We've got 83 projects, or excuse me, 83% of those deliveries, those bookings are all in the commercial space, 17% are recreational. If you had asked me to produce this in, say, February of 2021, so kind of a year into the pandemic, this would have been 100% recreational, which was pretty unprecedented for us, but ended up serving the business very, very well. We didn't slow down during that period at all. And in fact, we've done nothing but grow year on year, which is pretty exciting. So as far as the skilled trades that we're offering, we have these 5 specific kind of categories that we hire people within. And I'll touch a little bit on why I've got level 1, 2, 3 showing on a pyramid there in a second. But we're doing all of our CNC cutting and metal forming here on site. So we have an 8-foot by 30-foot CNC machine that we'll touch on here in a little bit. So we have a need for CNC programming and operation. So that starts with the interpretation of cut files from an engineering, program, all the way through to loading and unloading the machine. We also do a lot of aluminum fabrication and welding. Brix is a CWB, Canadian Welding Bureau, certified weld shop. And we selected CWB from a number of different regulatory, welding bodies that we could have used. And that's because we're also building vessels for Canadian owners. And having a CWB certification works very well in Canada and also perfectly translates here to the US, which was not the same if we tried to do that the other way. So if we use AWS, for instance, the American Welding Society, there would be additional certifications required to build boats for Canada. So CWB really enables us to meet all of our North American customers. We've also got a team of marine electricians. So these are current or previously ABYC certified individuals who are all, specifically, ABYC is the American Boat and Yacht Council. So their trade is specifically understanding what types of materials we use in a marine environment, and what that installation looks like. It's very different from being a journeyman electrician for shoreside projects. We've also got marine systems. So these are the folks that do any of our mechanical installations. So whether that's working on an engine, like you can see in that photo, or rigging, which is kind of a catch-all term that the marine industry uses and probably abuses at times. Anything that's got a line, a rope, a cable, so blocks, pulleys, hydraulics.
Go ahead.
Is there a question?
Oh, no, I don't think it was a question. Just someone wasn't on mute, but I put them on mute for you.
Gotcha. And then plumbing. So that marine systems group would also handle all of our plumbing, whether that's freshwater, blackwater systems, ice makers, water makers, bilge systems. So they handle the plumbing. And then we have what we refer to as our finish technicians. And these are the folks who specialize in joinery construction. So some of the more traditional cabinet making, woodworking, as well as specializing in coatings. So the types of paints that we use, types of insulation, and anything that we use to coat the boats. Mm-hmm. Now, within those 5 categories, we have worked pretty hard through the last few years to develop what we have called a skills matrix. And that's what relates to this pyramid that you see. So our skills matrix is set up for each one of these 5 trades to have a tier of experience. And so we have 3 levels within each one of those tiers, and each of those levels very specifically details out what type of tools those folks need to be adept at using or trained at using. It also will talk about very specific systems or processes of our build process that they need to be capable of doing, either with help or unsupervised or as a supervisor, to install those things. And so we've created this in order to give people a very clear line of sight on what growth for them looks like within the trades that they've chosen. And then we've taken that one step further, and we've also applied wage ranges to each of those. And so that enables us to provide, you know, a pretty high level of wage transparency. If somebody gets hired as an entry level finished technician, for instance, they would have a very clear list of all the things under level 1 that they would need to learn how to do in order to be advanced to a level 2, and they'd be able to see exactly what their wages would look like. And this has become a really great tool for not only for our management staff, and you know, trying to interpret what our employment and staffing needs are for the future, but this has worked really well even just for our frontline managers and supervisors. This gives you know, all of our leads in each one of these categories are folks that we have promoted from within, and they're historically very good at what they do. However, the management side is something that they're learning, and this skills matrix has given them some very clear tools for them to utilize with their coworkers to say, hey, I'm trying to get you up to a high level 2 by the end of this year, and here's the tools I need to train you on, and here's, you know, here's some of the processes I need you to really step up in. And so it doesn't solve all of our problems, but what it does is give us an opportunity to be very clear about what the future looks like for people, and that's been very well received. And we're constantly refining that, you know, at the same time. It's not at no point am I claiming that it's perfect, but it's been a step in the right direction for being able to grow our business. It's also enabled us to be, I think, more helpful with the development of the marine trades program at Peninsula College. We've also partnered with them with their welding school and welding program with training aluminum welding, and the way we're doing that in-house has made it easier for us to translate that to come out to some of our other partners in this area to say, hey, how about you teach people how to do these things, because that makes them really valuable to us. So that's worked really well.
So a couple quick questions about that. Do you do, like, of those 5 areas, do you have training that you want from outside of Brix, or is all this in-house training? And do you ever have internships? What does the training regimen look like?
Yeah, so there's a couple questions there. I'll try to make sure I hit on all of them. We have never had formal internships. However, we have had opportunities to bring people in on a part-time basis, and that gives them an opportunity to see if this is something they really want to, you know, dive into, a career that they want to have, and us an opportunity to see, you know, if they're a good fit for our team. That has worked really well. That has primarily been in the fabrication welding area. So specifically with Peninsula College, we've been able to bring in a couple of employees who are students at the time. And so even though it's not technically an internship, half their time is spent at the college and half their time is spent as a paid part-time employee at Brix. I can tell you in every one of those situations, they've ended up being full-time Brix employees. So it's worked really well. So no formal internship, but that's the way we've handled it. As far as the training, within our skills matrix for each department, we have our initial plan has been to keep that in-house training only. So those skills matrix, in order to advance between levels, does not require you to have external training. However, external training is absolutely important, and we have a training reimbursement program. So there are some trainings that we elect for employees, and we're like, hey, we really need you to understand this new Yamaha outboard rigging system, and so we'll send people to Georgia to get trained. We just did that in October for a couple of folks who managed to go down there and pass. And then if there are other trainings that we're saying are not required to advance within Brix, however, they would be good for you as an individual to learn, then we have a reimbursement program. So For instance, we teach all of our people ABYC regulations, but we can't provide an ABYC certification to an individual person. However, if that person decides I want to get an ABYC card, they can choose to challenge the ABYC classes, and then we'll pay for that process. But it isn't required for them to advance.
Got it. Angela asks, what's the average time to each level skill set?
That's a really good question. I don't have exact data for that. But what I can tell you is that level 2 is the majority of our workforce. So when we hire somebody at level 1, we're not intending to keep them there. Our goal would be to get them to advance to a level 2 or a level 3. I would guess that between advancing from level 2 to level 3, you're looking at probably somebody who's in the 4 to 5 year experience to advance beyond level 2. So that gives you kind of a gauge. Level 1 is really about a year. Level 2 then probably works out to be about three years, and then level 3 would be somebody at 4+ years of experience.
Sure. Great.
Good question. Maybe we should track that. I'll make a note. So moving beyond some of the bigger projects, if any of you have heard me speak over the last few months, some of this will be a repeat for you, so I apologize, but this stuff is still pretty new for us, so I'm still excited to talk about it. One of the recent changes, less than a year ago, we haven't even had a full 12-month cycle yet with our new CNC router. So a number of years ago, we decided to compete for a MARAD small shipyard grant. So this is a federal grant that's designed specifically for shipyards. It's generally very, very competitive. There can be hundreds of applicants. MARAD tries to award one project per state. Washington has a lot of shipyards, so it's very, very competitive in Washington to win. And we were super proud that the very first time we ever put in an application, we won. So we were successful in that, and that enabled us to the MARAD program paid part of the capital expenditure, not all, but a portion of it, for us to improve our CNC cutting capabilities. So what we ended up doing was making some modifications to our current facility that would enable us to bring in a larger CNC machine. So up to that point, we had a 7 by 25 foot table. We now have an 8 by 30 CNC router table. And over the top of that is a 2-ton bridge crane. So it's a crane that's dedicated specifically just to the CNC machine, loading and unloading. We also got a vacuum plate lifter, which enables us to, it's a pretty fancy suction cup at the end of the day, and it picks up 8 foot by 30 foot sheets of aluminum. And what that did is it enables us now to have one person operating in that bay. So a full 8 by 30 sheet of aluminum can get picked up, placed on the table, cut, and pulled off the table by one person, and done very safely, as opposed to what we had before, which was a forklift and plate clamps and multiple employees. And it was a lot more work, and there was a lot more risk associated with it. So we're very, very pleased with those changes. It'll be a year in coming up here next month. Actually, April is when we first programmed the machine. So we're pretty excited about that change and what it's meant for us. We also went out this last year, less than a year ago, for a JSP grant. We competed for that with the help of Impact Washington and Peninsula College. And we were able to put together a training program for our shop leads and for some of our management staff. This was specifically around improving our work instructions for employees. And so we got to start with some things like learning how to fold a t-shirt all the way through to how to build scupper caps for boats. So this was pretty cool. I mentioned that all of our leads in our departments are folks that we've promoted from within. And you know what that means is there's a whole toolbox of management that they're learning about. And you know, we're trying to teach them what I call soft skills in management and leadership. And so this was a great opportunity for us to start thinking through, hey, how do we bring in a level 1 employee and help them advance to level 2? So far that's that training we did go through. So we've kind of we've closed out that particular JSP grant, and we'll look to doing that again in the future. And then another large program that we started on was this 5S training and implementation. So we again engaged with Impact Washington to help us select the right training partner. And we ended up bringing in an expert specifically in 5S and lean manufacturing, who could come in here and kind of teach us some tools about how to improve our efficiency by cleaning and organizing our shop a specific way. And so we're actually right now, we're in the process of going through that. We've kind of mapped out our entire facility, and then we've created little project zones, and we've just started into that, and are hoping to have that at a pretty advanced stage by this summer. Amongst building boats, we have a very full production schedule. So those are just some of the working on the business, you know, things that we're engaged in, and we'll continue to. I would encourage folks to check out our website, brixmarine.com. If you have questions, there's a lot more photos and details about our products, and we really try to work hard to keep our news section up to date. So in case you miss a launch down at the harbor, you don't get a chance to see it in person, you'll be able to check some of that stuff out on our website. Are there any other questions?
Yeah. So thanks so much, Perry. There are some questions in the chat, and I'm going to make Lori the host here shortly. I got to jump off in 5 minutes. But, you know, with the recompete grant, part of what we're trying to do is get 25 to 54-year-olds back into the workforce. If you had an opportunity to hire people that you felt would do well through your skill levels, what's the maximum number of people that you could hire that the business could support with the market demand that it has?
In our current location, so I'll just throw that out as a teaser. In our current location and configuration, we can only handle so many employees. And we have found that at 55 production employees, we're about peaked out for our facility. And right now we're just over 40. So that gives you kind of a scale. Like we could very easily add 13, 14, almost 15 more.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, with the recompete program, you know, we've got a workforce development component, and we're looking at paid internships for a period of time that would allow, you know, a ramp phase, and then potentially paying mentors to get those folks on board. That would be shared between multiple businesses that do similar types of work. What would that look like ideally? I mean, is a 30-day internship, a 60-day, a 90, understanding that there's only a certain amount of funds that go around? What would be the ideal model for Brix Marine?
30 days would be a little short. I think there's definitely some things you can learn about somebody's attitude, you know, within a 30-day period, and how reliable they're going to be. But in terms of skill development, we would probably like to see, you know, a minimum of 60 days. So
Okay.
that would be a 2-month cycle. Mentorship, I'm a huge believer in. I personally, like, I really think that it's important for people to have somebody, whether they're even in their same specific skill set or not, but somebody who has a depth of experience within the industry who can provide guidance. You know, sometimes you just need somebody to say, hey, stick in there, kid. Like,
Yeah.
this is going to pass. You'll get beyond that. So the mentorship, I think that's a great question. I'm a big believer in that, and I'd love to explore more of how to make effective mentors and use that as a program.
Mhm.
But as far as an internship is concerned, we would be very interested in that. We're building a fairly sophisticated product that takes a high level of skill. And so one of the challenges that we have in finding people is being able to not only find that good cultural fit, but somebody who's capable of doing the work.
Got it. So Angela asked, what type of quality certifications does Brix have? Do you adhere to ISO standards?
Not specifically ISO. So our products will be analyzed by the U.S. Coast Guard primarily. So we have weekly quality inspection visits by a U.S. Coast Guard personnel. They're here every Thursday. And then if we're building boats for Canada, we'll undersee that same level of oversight, but it'll be on the Canadian side. So we'll actually have folks come down, usually out of the Vancouver office, to provide those inspections. And then internally, we have an internal quality control program where we have very specific checkpoints with an accountability tree for who takes care of what and what gets repaired and what doesn't. We were ISO certified at one point in time, and we continue to use some of those ISO 9001 strategies. However, we don't have any specific oversight from ISO at this point.
So here's a comment from Stephen Paleo. It seems like Brix is very thoughtful when it comes to HR. How many employees? You answered that. What about average tenure? How is employee turnover? If someone decides to leave, what's generally the reason why? Is it cost of living, housing, competitive pay elsewhere? Can you share a little bit of background in those areas?
Yeah, so those are great questions. First of all, our recruiting plan starts with retain and train. So, you know, we really want to keep people, and we really believe in promoting from within where we have that opportunity, and everybody who's in management here has been through that process. Our average tenure is definitely growing. So we do quarterly acknowledgements of work anniversaries within each quarter. And I don't have the exact stat in front of me. Our average tenure is definitely, you know, in the level 2, level 3 range of skills. So we're talking people who've been with the business more than 5 years. Our welding and fabrication leads going on 22 years in the business. And so really driving that retention is important. As far as you know, why people would choose to move on, we have had one voluntary person move on in the last year, and it was to a completely different trade. And he managed to find an opportunity that would pay him more on an hourly basis. So that's the specific data point I can share on that. That was more that could be paid at that specific time, as opposed to what that career path looked like. He was still a level 1 guy. We're not seeing level 2 and level 3 people making the decision to move on.
Got it. So I have to jump off. So Lori's going to take over for me. I think there's a couple questions still in the chat, and I'll let her take it. So thank you so much, Perry. We got 10 minutes left, and I got to get City of Sequim.
You bet. Thanks, Colleen. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.